So we are going to see about the introduction to formal proofs, additional forms of proof, and inductive proofs. Okay. The same textbook you are going to follow, and you just write down introduction to formal proofs. Okay. So we say that theorem. What is a theorem? Okay, we shall define what is a theorem. So theorem means it is universal truth. So theorem means it's going to be a English-like statement, is it not? So now we are not going to solve more problems. We are going to concentrate on about theorems and proving techniques. How to prove theorems? Okay. So theorems in general, you can define theorem as universal truth. Okay. So universal truth is that particular statement or theorem, it must be true for all possible values or conditions. Then only we can call that it is a theorem. Okay. So simply, if you are taking any theorem, okay, any statement, it must be true for all possible values. It must be universally acceptable. Okay. So everybody should accept that. Only those statements it will be considered as theorem. Okay. So therefore, we call it as universal truth. And there are some ways of proving theorems. Okay. So those techniques it is listed out here. So some of the techniques are deductive proofs, inductive proofs, and then proof by contradiction, proof by counter example, and reduction to definition. Okay, so we'll see how these techniques they differ by each other. Okay, so in all the theorems, we are going to analyze what is the proof technique. Okay, what is the technique of proving the theorem? So if you are having a theorem statement, what we will do? We will try to prove that the theorem is correct. Okay, so in your school days we have studied, is it not? Proving theorems. Okay, so what we will do? You will have a theorem statement. You will write like proof, like that. You write proof. You write what are all the given statements, and we will do some set of steps to prove that theorem is correct. Okay, and finally you will conclude. Hence, the theorem is proved. Okay. So in doing so, there are so many techniques in proving theorems. Okay, so those methods only we are going to discuss. Okay, so first one is about deductive proof, and then you have problems in inductive proof, and then proof by contradiction, counter example, and reduction to definition. So we'll begin with your once again some statements we are going to discuss about the proofs. So formal proofs are proofs in which we try to prove the statement B. If statement B is true because state A is true. Okay. So we try to prove that statement B is true because state A is true. It means that your theorem statement will go like this: if A then B. Okay. You'll have a statement like if A then B. So most of your theorem statements will be of this form. Okay. If A then B, you'll have a if condition and then condition. It means that if A defines what are all the given conditions. Okay, so in proving theorem, something will be given as input. Okay, some initial conditions will be given. Based on that only we try to prove the conclusion. Okay, we prove that this B is correct. Okay, so your theorem statements will be of this form: if A then B. You note down this one: if A then B. So here your A is called as your hypothesis. Hypothesis defines your given statements or given input conditions. Okay, so A is called as hypothesis, and with the details available within your hypothesis, we try to derive at our conclusion. That is, we try to derive at B. Okay, so from A we generate some set of statements and we come at B. We come and end up at B. Okay. So with the hypothesis, we derive at a conclusion. That is your general form of a theorem. Okay. So if A then B defines, A is a hypothesis and B is a conclusion. So from the given hypothesis or from the given set of conditions, we derive at your conclusion B. So that is the general way of proving any simple theorem. Okay. So in doing so, there are major classification like deductive proof and inductive proof. Okay. So deductive proof takes this condition: if A then B. Okay. So this general condition called if A then B, it belongs to your deductive proof. Okay. You will have a sequence of statements with some logical reasoning or with some set of values. So they will be your first or initial statement. So they are called as hypothesis. So in your given So you assume that this if A then B is a theorem. Okay, if A then B is a theorem, we call this as a statement. So the first part of your statement will have your hypothesis, and from the first part of the statement we derive at the conclusion, the second part. Okay, and inductive proof is is going to use a recursive kind of proof technique. Okay, it will have some sequence of steps. So initially we assume or solve your statement or expression with some lower values, and then we apply recursive steps to prove that your statement is correct. That is your inductive proof. Okay. Try to remember, you have studied something called as a mathematical induction. Okay, we have studied something called mathematical induction in your school days. So that applies here to your inductive proof. Okay, so all those problems, whatever you have studied under mathematical induction in your school days, the same thing. We are going to solve some simple problems here. Okay, so we'll once again analyze your deductive proof. Okay, write the heading as deductive proofs. So deductive proofs are statements of the form if H then C. Okay, if H then C. And your H is called hypothesis, C is called conclusion. And there are some alternative ways of defining your statement also, defining your deductive proof. It is H implies C. If a theorem statement has a word called implies, hypothesis implies conclusion, H implies C, it also defines a deductive proof technique. And C if H, it also defines your deductive proof. Just write down this in your notebook. So these are asked in your 2-mark questions. Like certain proof techniques are asked in 2 marks. The mathematical induction problems, they are asked in part B questions. Okay, so in such a way you can note down. And some of the proof techniques will be of this form: A if and only if B. Okay, this one A I F of B, it defines A if and only if B. Okay, so statements of this form can also be equivalently defined in other ways, like A is equivalent to B. Okay, some theorems will have statement like A prove that A is equivalent to B, or prove that A if and only if B. Like that, some statements will be given. Okay, so all these three are similar notations or equivalent notations. A if and only if B, or A is equivalent to B, or A IF of B. These are all equivalent terms. Okay, so when your statement has if and only if condition, you are going to break that into proving two steps in proving. Okay, so if you are having if and only if, we are going to solve it as two parts. Okay, if part and only if part. Okay, so in if part, you are going to write like if B then A. You are going to solve the condition if B then A, and in only if part, you are going to solve for if A then B. So why we are studying about this technique now? Why I'm taking this now is we have done a problem for NFA to DFA conversion. Is it not? So there you have a theorem statement. I'll give you the theorem statement now. Your theorem statement will go like this. So if there is an NFA, then there is a DFA. Like that. Your theorem goes like that. Show that if there is an NFA, then there is a DFA. So you have to understand that the theorem states that it is a problem. The theorem states that if there is an NFA, then there is a DFA. Okay. So you are asked to prove that if initially there is an NFA, you have to prove that it can be converted into a DFA accepting the same language. Okay. Or if your problem is like this, if your theorem statement is like show that NFA, show that L defines a language defined by an NFA if and only if L defines a language defined by B. Like that, if there is a statement. Okay, so they are asking you to prove that both the NFA and DFA, they are equivalent. In that case, you have to apply this second part of the slide. Okay, so you have an if and only if condition. They have asked for if and only if. Okay, so you have to break your theorem into two subparts, if part and only if part. You have to prove for if there is an NFA, then there is a DFA, and also you have to prove for if there is a DFA, then there is a NFA. Okay, so like that, whichever problem you are doing conversions, okay, NFA to DFA you converted, epsilon NFA to DFA you converted. So all those problems has an equivalent theorem. Okay, so those theorem steps will use this either if H then C or if and only if condition. You have to apply the technique like if it is of if and only if condition, you are going to break it into two parts, and both the two parts you are going to prove it separately. Okay, so that's the use of your deductive proofs. So you might imagine why in TOC we are studying proof techniques like that. Okay, so all your problems, it is associated with this proof techniques. When you are having a problem to convert one into another, we are going to use this methodology of if and only if or if then condition. So in deductive proof, we are going to see one example here. Write down this statement. I've taken one theorem. This is a textbook example. If x greater than or equal to 4, then 2 power x greater than or equal to x squared. You have to prove that if x greater than 4, then 2 power x greater than or equal to x squared. So here you have to analyze this theorem and find out what is the form of this. Okay, what is the form of this theorem? Since it has if then condition, you have to assume that if H then C. So you have to identify what is hypothesis and what is conclusion. So your hypothesis is the given condition, that is x greater than or equal to 4. So initially you have to take this x greater than or equal to 4 as the assumption or given condition, and then you have to conclude or you have to derive at this condition that 2 power x is greater than or equal to x squared. Okay, so with the hypothesis H, that is x greater than or equal to 4, you are going to analyze or you just apply values on that x. Okay, if x is 1, what does it, whether this statement holds true or not. If x is 2, whether the statement holds true or not. Like that you apply values. Okay, so let us try for some values. Okay, here they have taken x is equal to 6. So if you are taking x is equal to 6 and H is true for x is equal to 6 and false for x is equal to 2. Okay, so you apply x is equal to 2 here or 3. So 3 greater than or equal to 4. So you apply all the values, but initially it is given as if x is greater than or equal to 4. Okay, so but even then I'm going to apply the lower values of x to test this theorem. Okay, we'll test the values for 1, 2, 3, 4. So in certain conditions, for 1, if you are applying 2 power 1 greater than 1, the condition goes false. Okay, so for 1 the condition is false. 2 power 1 greater than or equal to 1, the condition goes false. Okay, and if you are applying 2 power 2 greater than or equal to 2 power 2, it is here it is solved. When you are x is 2, where they have solved, I'll show in the next slide. Okay, so when your x is 2, 2 power 2 is 4, and here also 2 power 2 is 4, it is equal. So the condition holds true. Okay, and when you are taking x as 3, 2 power 3 greater than or equal to 3 power 2. So 2 power 3 is 8, 8 is greater than or equal to 9, it is coming. So the condition is false. So till this value is 1, 2 and 3, 1 is false and 3 is false. And later when you take the other values of 4, okay, when you are taking 4, the condition is going to hold true. 2 power 4 is equal to 4 power 2, it is true. And for when you are taking x is equal to 5, the statement is true because 2 power 5 is 32 and 5 power 2 is 25. Here also 2 power 5 is greater than 5 power 2. So when you are going for larger values of x, this condition will always be true because the left hand side it's going to be taking the powers of 2. So it's going to grow exponentially. Okay, so it will increase by a factor of, there is a constant factor with that. This left hand side value, it will be increasing by a factor of 1.56. Okay, but this right hand side value, it will increase only by a smaller amount when compared to the left hand side. So there is a difference, and exponentially this left hand side is going to increase. Okay, it's always going to be increasing at the rate of 1.56. okay, so therefore for larger values of x, okay, from 4, 5, 6 onwards, the condition is going to be true always. So that's why the statement is defined as if x is greater than or equal to 4, 2 power x is greater than or equal to x squared. But for lower values like 3 and 1, it goes false. So therefore, the statement it has been started from x is equal to 4 onwards. Okay. So you have to test for all these values and then you have to conclude. So these are some additional forms of proof. So apart from your deductive proof and inductive proof, there sometimes they ask in your exam itself, what are the additional forms of proof? Okay, in that case, you have to define these proof techniques: proof about set, proof by contrapositive, proof by contradiction, and proof by counterexample. These 4 things you just write down. Sometimes in your university exam, they are explicitly asking what are the additional forms of proof. Okay. So proof about set means, so it defines the set notation. In mathematics, you studied set theory, is it not? A set A is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. A set B is equal to 4, 5, 6, like that. We can perform union or intersection or minus operation in your sets. So proofs based on your sets, it's called as proof about set. Okay. So there you can prove that if A union B, then B union A is also holds. Okay. A union B is equal to B union A. That commutative law, associative law, that can be proved. By now, you will just write down these 4 steps alone. Okay. I'll give you some example. Proof about set, proof by contrapositive, proof by contradiction, and proof by counterexample. So we'll see one example for proof about sets. So if there are 2 sets, say R and S. Okay. So how to prove this is, we are going to take 2 sets called R and S, and if X is in R, if and only if it is in S, we can prove like this. Okay. If a particular value X is in R, then it should also be in S. Okay. So we can prove this by using this condition: A union B is equal to B union A. So we can take a statement and justification. So X is in A union B. Draw a table. The statement is, we assume that initially your hypothesis or our assumption is X is in A union B. It means that X is in A or X is in B. Your union defines the OR condition. So X might be either in set A or X might be in set B. Okay. So I try to prove that A union B is equal to B union A. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to just interchange these 2 statements. X is in A, I'm going to take it as a second right hand operand, and X is in B, I'm going to just take it as the first operand. I'm just simply doing changes in the statement, okay, without affecting the output. And X is in B or X is in A, like that we can redefine. So it is by the definition of union, because union is going to give the same result. So in the justification part, we have to justify why we are writing the statement. Okay. So why we are writing the statement, we have to write. So you can see in the second row in line serial number 2, your justification is by definition of union, and by the statement 1, we have written the second statement. Okay. So from this first statement, X is in A union B, I have written X is in A or X is in B. So how can I write this? By the definition of union and from the statement 1. Okay. And similarly, the third statement is written by the definition of union. Okay. So X is in A or X is in B, I can write like this also: X is in B or X is in A. Okay. And from the statement 2, we have written this statement. Okay. And once again, this statement can be written as X is in B union A. Okay. So therefore, we can conclude that A union B has been equivalent to B union A. Okay. So here, we just analyze this statement in the red color statement. Theorem statement is given. Prove that R is equal to S. This is your statement. So when you are having equality, we are going to apply if and only if principle, and we have splitted your proof step into 2 parts: if part and only if part. So in if part, we have to take this one: if X is in A union B, then it is in B union A, like that. In your else if part, you have taken the other thing: if B union A is a given condition, then A union B. The same steps you are going to apply here also. Just change the left hand and right hand operands and you just define this statement. So since both the conditions holds good if part and only if part, both the things it's holding good. So we can say that R is equivalent to S. Okay, whenever you're having equality in your theorem, you have to split it into two parts, if part and only if part. So let's go for the next one, proof by contradiction. So simply assume you have a statement called if H then C. You need not write the entire paragraph. You write whatever I am telling you to write. You write this statement. If you're having a statement called if H then C, we are going to use the proof technique called H and not C implies falsehood. This line you have to write. H and not C implies falsehood. That is the key term in your proof by contradiction. Write this one, H and not C. The third line you are having H and not C implies falsehood. That is the statement for proof by contradiction. H and not C implies falsehood. So what we are going to do is H is the hypothesis given and we have to prove that C. We have to derive and conclude that C. So in proof by contradiction method, what we are going to do is I'm going to take H and I'm going to take the contradiction of your conclusion. We are going to take not C. Okay. So I'll take the given hypothesis, I'll take the contradiction of the conclusion and I'll apply so many steps and I'll derive that the theorem goes false. I'll disprove the theorem or some false condition will prove. And finally we say that since our assumption was wrong, since we have taken not C, therefore only the theorem went false. Okay. So since when we assume H and not C, it went to falsehood, we conclude that if H then C holds. Okay, we prove our theorem like that. Okay, so if we read through these lines, we state by assuming both hypothesis and negation of the conclusion, and we are computing the proof by taking the falsehood of your conclusion. Okay, so when you are trying to solve, so it means that if I'm taking the falsehood of the conclusion, the entire statement goes false. Then it means that it should not be a falsehood, it should be a correct form. So therefore, the statement if H then C is true, like that we'll be proving. We write this statement alone. H and not C implies falsehood. That is a statement for proof by contradiction. So proof by counter example. Next one, you write down proof by counter example. So I already told you that a theorem must be true for all possible values or condition. Okay. The theorem means it should be true for all possible values or conditions. Okay. So in proof by counter example, what we are going to do is we are going to say that your theorem is false for a particular condition. You are going to identify or you are going to find some condition where your theorem goes false. Okay. And then we are going to rewrite our theorem. That is your technique used in your proof by counter example. You remember the word counter example. I am going to find out at least one point or at least one example where the theorem goes false. Okay, and that I am going to redefine. We'll see with an example. You just see here, read the statement. If it fails even for one case, then the theorem is no more a theorem. Okay, so theorem means it must be true for all possible values. If it fails even for one case, then the theorem is not at all a theorem. The theorem is no more a theorem. So we are going to identify that particular one case and we are going to modify that particular statement and we are going to write the theorem in a correct format. That is a technique in your counter example. You are going to identify one case where your theorem goes false. So take this statement, all primes are odd. This is consider this as a theorem. Okay, all primes are odd. You analyze this theorem and find out at least one case where this theorem goes false. So all primes are odd. So prime number means you just take all the prime numbers and you check whether all the prime numbers are odd. So what are all the prime numbers? So prime number means it should it should be divisible by only by 1 and itself, is it not? So whether the statement holds good, all primes are odd. For example, 5 is odd. So prime 5 is a prime number, it is odd. 7 is a prime number, it is odd. 11 is a prime number, it is odd. 27 is a prime number, it is odd. So find out at least one prime number which is not odd, which is even, which is not odd. Can you tell any one prime number which is not odd? Yes. Which is a prime number? Yes.
2, ma'am.
2, yes. So 2 is a prime number, but it is not odd. 2 is an even number, but a prime number. So we have identified that particular case where the statement goes false. Okay. So here you consider the statement all primes are odd. Given statement is all primes are odd, it is a theorem, then it must be true for all possible conditions, but for one condition this theorem is not holding good, it's not holding correctly. Okay, for 2 is a prime number, but it is an even number, but it is not odd. So the theorem, entire theorem goes false. You cannot say that this statement is a theorem. This statement is not at all a theorem. So it means that I have to modify this theorem. Yes, now we have proved that this statement is not true. So your modified theorem is going to be all primes are odd except 2. So you have to give that for counter example, you have to identify that particular condition where your theorem will go false, and you modify the theorem. Okay. So in your same theorem, all primes are odd, you are going to insert this condition. All primes are odd except 2. So now you just read the statement, all primes are odd except 2. So now I can very well accept that the statement is a theorem, because no one can find a fault with this statement. Okay, all primes are odd except 2. Now this is a theorem. Okay, so this will be universally acceptable. So we can call this as a theorem. So that is the method used in your counter example. Okay, you have to identify that particular case where your theorem goes false and modify your theorem and rewrite your theorem statement. So here afterwards, this will be your theorem. Okay. So this one, this particular proof technique, it is asked in your 2 marks in your university exam. So repeatedly they are asking proof by counter example, and then proof by contradiction. Okay, and principle of mathematical induction. These are the 3 things they will ask in your 2 marks. The first question in your university question paper will be this one. Define proof by counter example, like that. So it is enough if you are just defining these statements and giving, you have to give one example. Okay, give that particular statement and then give an example. Okay, if you are asked about the previous proof technique, what we saw in the previous proof technique, proof by contradiction, you have to write this line, that is H and not C implies falsehood. If this line is there, you'll be awarded mark. Okay, so each and every technique, every proof technique has a particular key concept that you have to remember. So H and not C implies falsehood. This one is the key term in your proof by contradiction. Similarly, in proof by counter example, you have to identify that particular case where your theorem goes false, that statement. If it fails even for one case, then the theorem is no more a theorem. This is your key term for your proof by counter example. Okay. And one more example we'll take. There is no pair of integers such that a mod b equal to b mod a. Write down this. One more example for counter example. There is no pair of integers such that a mod b equal to b mod a. So mod is the remainder. Okay, mod is your remainder. If I am applying mod operator on 2 values, 5 mod 2, it is going to give the remainder of 5 divided by 2. So you'll get 1, is it not? So you apply some values. You take the value of a and a as 5 and b as 2. And you check whether a mod b is equal to b mod a. Whether a mod b will be equal to b mod a, it won't be equal, because 5 mod 2 is 1, 2 mod 5 is 2. It won't be equal. You take some other values like 4 mod 3. 4 mod 3. Some numbers you just take. 4 mod 3 is 1 and 3 mod 4 is 3. or take a 2-digit number. 15 mod 2. 15 mod 2 is 15 mod 2, it is 1, and 2 mod 15 is 2. Both these are not same. So therefore your statement is there is no pair of integers such that a mod b equal to b mod a. If you are applying some values on a and b, it will never be equal. It will never be equal. Therefore your statement is like no pair of integers. You have to read your statement carefully. Okay, it is not defined as a mod b equal to b mod a. You go and read the entire statement, there is no pair of integers. You have to note down this no pair of integers. Okay, there is no pair of integers means when you are taking values for a and b, when you are applying this condition, they won't be equal. They are the statement is defined as it won't be equal. Okay, so statement itself defines that a mod b will not be equal to b mod a. Okay, so now what is our task? In our proof by counter example, we have to identify at least one case where a mod b will be equal to b mod a. You have to identify, find out at least one number or one case where your a mod b will be equal to b mod a. Can anyone guess for this one? A mod b and b mod a must be equal. Whether there is any possibility, just try with some combination of numbers. Apply some values for a and b and find out whether a mod b will be equal to b mod a. I want a particular condition. I want that condition. So when your a mod b will be equal to b mod a. This also I think somewhere you might have studied in your mathematics. Anyone, can you guess this? Can you identify any particular number where your a mod b will be equal to b mod a? Okay, so I will give you the
A is equal to B.
yes. Okay, good. When a is equal to b, so you apply the same value for both a and b. You take the value of a as 3 and b also as 3. At that point, what will be what you will get? 3 mod 3 equal to 3 mod 3. 3 mod 3 is 0, and both the left hand side and right hand side of this equal to symbol will be 0. Okay, so when you are taking the same values for both a and b, this condition will hold true. It will be true. Okay, so when you are having both a and b as the same value, 2 mod 2 or 3 mod 3. Okay, so in that condition alone, your left hand and right hand will be equal and it will be 0. Okay, so here your condition goes false. When you are taking same values for a and b, the statement will go false. It will become equal. Okay, so we are going to redefine this statement. We can redefine this statement by writing as your modified theorem will be there is no pair of integers such that a mod b equal to b mod a and a not equal to b. You have to define explicitly that a and b must not be same. Okay, so a and b must not be same. A and b must be different values. Then only your theorem will hold good. If you are applying same values for both a and b, this theorem will not be true. It won't be a theorem. Okay, so that is the method in your counter example. You have identified one particular case where this statement goes false, and therefore you redefine your statement as redefine your theorem and include that condition along with the theorem. Okay, there is you write the same theorem and include that additional condition where you have identified the problem. So there is no pair of integers such that a mod b equal to b mod a. You include this term b mod a and a not equal to b. You have to define a must not be equal to b. Okay, so write this statement. Next we'll see about proof by contradiction. Okay, we'll see what is proof by contradiction. Proof by contradiction, I think we have already seen. If H and not C implies falsehood, we have already discussed. Proof by counter example also I gave you the example. Okay, we have rewritten. Proof by contrapositive. We write down this one. Proof by contrapositive. here we analyze the logical relationship between two elements. Okay, so contrapositive is the reversal of negation of both the statements. So in general, you are going to prove your statement will be, once again take the same example, if x greater than or equal to 4, then 2 power x greater than or equal to x squared. Your theorem form is if h then c. Okay, if hypothesis is the given condition, we are going to prove the conclusion, then c. The later part you are going to prove. Okay, so in this method called proof by contrapositive, what we are going to take, we are going to negate both the condition, that is we are going to negate the conclusion. Okay, we are going to negate if not c then not h, that is we are going to negate the conclusion, and we are also going to negate the hypothesis. Okay, so if your statement is like this, if p then q, and we are going to rewrite it as if not q then not p. Okay, we'll negate your conclusion and we'll derive that our input also will be negated at the end. When you are trying to derive the steps, your input condition, there will be a contradiction with your input condition. Okay, so you just see here p q, complement of p and complement of q they've taken. So p implies q, it is your if p then q. Okay, if p then q can be written as p implies q, and in your proof by contrapositive we are going to negate your conclusion and we try to derive at your p. Okay, so you just write down these statements. Then the contrapositive, the statement is if not, negate your conclusion, if not 2 power x greater than or equal to x squared, then not x greater than or equal to 4. So here also to prove this, you just apply the values of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have to prove this. So it is asked only in 2 marks. You just note down this statement. This is a hint here. The key point is if not c, then not h. You have to write down this one. If not c, then not h. So mostly we'll be using your deductive proof and inductive proofs in our problems. Okay, so we'll see some problems under inductive proof. So inductive proofs are your principle of mathematical induction. It follows the principle of mathematical induction. We apply some recursive steps, and the principle behind your mathematical induction is your problems they are solved as 2 steps. So this problem, it is asked in your part B question. They are asking it in 8 mark or 10 mark question. Okay, not as a 13 mark. It is asked as 10 mark or 8 mark question. So you can split your proof technique as 2 steps: basis step and the induction step. In the basis step, what we do is we show that S of n is true. So if your given statement is yes, we try to prove that the statement S is a theorem, and S is yes, you have to prove that S is true. So to show that S of n is true, in basis step we are going to take lower values of n. Okay, we are going to apply lower values for n, possibly 0 or 1. Lowest possible value of 0 or 1 we are going to take, and we are going to prove in your basis step. And in the induction step, we are going to solve it as 2 steps. One is your assumption and another one is the proof. Okay, we assume that statement n is already true. Okay, we assume the statement n is the statement is true for the value n, and we assume that statement S of n is true. That is, the given statement is true, like that we assume. And then we try to prove that S of n plus 1 is true. We try to prove for the another value of n. We take one more value for n and we prove that S of n plus 1 is true. So this, try to recollect what you have studied already. The basis step, you apply lower values for the n, and in the induction step we assume S of n is true and we try to prove that S of n plus 1 is true. So we'll see one problem here. Just write down the statement. Show that 1 plus 2 plus 3 up to n, a series we have taken, is equal to n into n plus 1 by 2. This is a statement you are asked to prove using mathematical induction. Write this in your notebook. show that 1 plus 2 plus 3 up to n is equal to n into n plus 1 by 2. This is a given problem. We have to prove this. So this is your S of n. The statement is your S of n. You have a term called n there. Okay. So in the basis step, what we are going to do, we are going to apply some lower values for n. Simply if I am taking 0 here, okay, I can apply either 0 or 1. But simply if I am taking 0, what will happen? Both the left hand side and right hand side, you will get 0. Okay. So in certain problems, like when you are having some powers 2 power n, there you can apply 0 and you will have some values. Okay. So here we will try with 1. So if you are applying 1, you will have some calculations, is it not? So you just take the value of 1 here because the starting itself is 1. Don't apply 0. So when you are taking 1, you solve the left hand side and solve the right hand side separately. So the left hand side, it evaluates to 1 because it is a series from 1 to 1. You have only one value, it is 1. Okay. And in the right hand side for n, you apply the value of 1. So 1 into 1 plus 1 by 2. Okay. Solve the expression, you will get 2 by 2. So right hand side also, it evaluates to 1. So when your left hand side and right hand side, it is same, we can say that n is true for 1 or s is true for the value 1. Okay, so statement s is true for the value 1. So s of 1 is true. We can define like s of 1 is true. Okay. So in the induction step, what we should do, we have 2 steps in your induction. We have to assume that s of n is true and we have to prove that s of n plus 1 is true. So write the statement, let s of n is true. Okay. So let s of n is true. So let s of n be true. That will be your assumption. So you can write like assume like that. So that is, you assume that 1 plus 2 plus 3 up to n is equal to n into n plus 1 by 2. We assume that the given statement is true. So it is evaluating to n into n plus 1 by 2. Like that we assume. Okay. And then we try to prove that s of n plus 1 is true. So here what we are going to do is take the left hand side. We are going to take your series. Your given expression is 1 plus 2 up to n. I'm going to take the next term also, n plus 1. So that will be your s of n plus 1. Okay, we have to prove s of n plus 1 is true. So your s of n plus 1 will be this left hand side, 1 plus 2 plus 3 up to n plus 1. You have to take till n plus 1. Okay. And we have to prove that the statement is true. So we'll just solve this. So here we have to take what you have assumed. You have assumed that this 1 plus 2 up to n, it is already true. We have assumed that s of n is true. So it means that 1 plus 2 plus 3 up to n, it is n into n plus 1 by 2. This we have assumed. So you can apply that value in this place. In the place of 1 plus 2 plus 3 up to n, you can apply your assumption. You have assumed that it will evaluate to n into n plus 1 by 2. So you can very well write this term here, n into n plus 1 by 2. So this term n plus 1 is written as such. Then you apply all your mathematical derivation steps. You apply the LCM, you do multiplication, addition, everything. So finally, we get a statement like this. This 2, it goes there. I think you can understand this. This mathematics and all you can understand. This 2 has been written here, 2 into n plus 1. So you're having 2 n plus 1s here. You take it as a common term. Then you will get n plus 1 as a term and n plus 2 as another term divided by 2. Now, you just analyze this. This statement is of the form n into n plus 1 by 2. Okay, you're given question, you just analyze. The statement in your right hand side is of the form n into n plus 1 by 2. Okay, so wherever there was n, now you have n plus 1. Okay, so if you are able to reach a statement like this, you can tell that s of n plus 1 is also true. Okay, so wherever there was n, now it is now n plus 1. Okay, your given statement is n into n plus 1 by 2. Now when I am applying n plus 1 for your last value, you are getting n plus 1 into n plus 2 by 2. So your statement is true. So s of n plus 1 is true. So now finally you conclude that s of n is true for all possible values. Okay. So since S of n plus 1 is also true, we can conclude S of n is true for all possible values. Okay. So this is a one very simple problem where in just 2 steps you got the answer. So there are some variations in your mathematical induction also. Your this is a sequence and you will have some more problems. I will show you that also. The only thing is you have to assume that S of n is true, and then you have to apply, you have to prove that S of n plus 1 is true. Take the next term also and you apply your assumption, you do this derivation. So here when you are applying this derivation, sometimes there are some you will be identifying factors, is it not, or some here you don't have any powers raised to the powers. So based on the expression, your expression evaluation, it should be correct to derive at this. I'll give you some more example. So you take this problem. Is the slide visible? Because I have taken from the handwritten notes. So a given expression is show that 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared up to n squared equals to n into n plus 1 into 2n plus 1 by 6, I think, into this is a textbook example. Into 2n plus 1 by 6. This question is repeatedly asked in your exam. Many times this question has been asked. So here your basis step easily you can prove. Take the lower value for 1 for n. So since your series it starts from 1, let us apply the value of 1 here and evaluate the left hand side. Left hand side is going to be 1. In the right hand side for n you apply 1. Wherever there is a n you apply 1 there. So it will be 1 into 1 plus 1 plus your expression is 2n plus 1. So 2n is 2 and then you're having a 1. You multiply everything. So it is 2 into 3 by 6. So 6 by 6 it is 1. So since your left hand side and right hand side is same, you can write S of 1 plus S of 1 is true. So basis step on this assumption, it's going to be the same for all the problem. So let us assume that S of n is true. S of n is true means you have to assume that this statement, the given statement is true. So in your proof, what we are going to do, wherever there is this statement, this left hand side, we can replace it with this right hand side. So that is the benefit of your assumption. Okay, we assume that the statement is true. Means when I am trying to prove the theorem for n plus 1, we will apply this value. Okay, we'll equate this one 1 square plus 2 square up to n squared with the right hand side value, okay, which we assumed. So now we assume that 1 squared plus 2 squared up to n squared is equal to n into n plus 1 into 2n plus 1 by 6. So to prove S of n plus 1 is true, in your left hand side you just increase the term by 1. So already till n squared it is given in your question. You include one more term n plus 1 as your last term and write n plus 1 squared. We have to prove that this statement also holds true according to your given question. So by here you have to utilize your assumption. Already I have assumed that 1 squared till your n squared, its value is n into n plus 1 into 2n plus 1 by 6. This is your assumption. That assumption you have to apply here and write the last term n plus 1 the whole squared in the right hand side. You do the same step. In your previous problem what we did, the same step you are going to follow here. You multiply this 6, take the LCM, multiply it with 6, you apply your formula a plus b into c plus d. What you will do, you multiply all the terms. So here before multiplying we have removed this term, n plus 1 is common here. You try to simplify your statement as far as possible. Okay, before simply multiplying you can see n plus 1 is common, you can take that out. Okay, you can take that n plus 1 out, then your statement will be n into 2n plus 1 plus 6 into n plus 1. You solve this, multiply all the terms, you write it as a equation like this, quadratic equation like this. You have n squared plus 7n plus 6. Take a factor. I hope you remember how to find the factors of an equation. How will you find? Multiply this 6 and 12, it is 12. 6 and 2. 6 and 2, if you are multiplying, it is 12. So 12 can be written as 4 into 3. That 4 and 3, if you're adding, you must have this middle term. Okay. I hope you can remember. Others, if you're not able to remember, you just try to recollect. If you're having an equation like this, we have to find the factors, or you have to rewrite the 7n in terms of factors. So take the first term 2 and last term constant 6, multiply that is 12. 12 must be written as two terms or factors which you are when you are adding should evaluate to the middle term. So 12 can be written as 4 into 3. So you can write the 7n in terms of that 4 and 3. 4n plus 3n. Split it, because my equation must be finally in the form of this one, n into n plus 1 into 2n plus 1, like that I should get. So I don't want a large equation. You have to take it as factors, and you have to minimize or simplify. So now you try to take some common terms outside. You can take 2n in the first two terms. From the first two terms, you can take 2n as a common term. And then the second term, you have the number 3 as a common thing. You can take 3 outside. So you'll get n plus 2 inside. So n plus 2 is common in this step. So take that n plus 2 separately, write this 2n plus 3 separately. Now you analyze this statement. It will be of the form of the given equation. So you have the 6 in the denominator. Wherever there is n, we have applied n plus 1, is it not? Wherever there is n, now it has been replaced with n plus 1. So in that way, if it is evaluated, then your answer is correct. Okay, wherever there was n, now you have n plus 1. So in the given equation, we had n into n plus 1 into 2n plus 1. So wherever there was n, I had n plus 1 now. So when there is an n plus 1, we have n plus 2. And when there is a 2n plus 1, for n, if you are applying n plus 1, you will get 2n plus 3. Okay, so if your proof steps, if it has concluded like this, then you can stop there. Okay, so you can conclude that S of n plus 1 is also true. So we can conclude that the statement is true for all possible values. Hence, S of n is true for all possible values. You write that conclusion statement at the end. S of n is true for all possible cases. S of n is true for all possible cases, like that you conclude. Okay, so this is also a simple problem like the previous problem. It also follows the same technique. I hope you have written, everyone. Let's go for one more variation of your mathematical induction. So in these two problems, it is only series. You assume that n is true. We assume that n plus 1 is true. We just expanded the term or extended the sequence to n plus 1, and we proved it with simple steps. And we'll take one more variation. Show that n cube plus 2n is divisible by 3 using induction. Show that n cube plus 2n is divisible by 3. You are having statements like this, divisibility, divisible by 3. Sometimes they ask, like, they will give an expression, and you have to prove that it is divisible by 13. That is one more problem it is asked. Divisibility by 13. At that time, your equation is having some other terms, 4n, like that. So I'll have, for that I have shown a very simple problem here. N cube plus 2n is divisible by 3. We have to prove. Here also you take the basis step. Okay, here also we take the basis step. In basis step, you apply the value of 1 for your n. So 1 cube plus 2 into 1 is 3. So now your answer is 3. It is divisible by 3. It means that your hypothesis, it is holding true. Okay, this statement is holding true. So S of 1 is true. Okay, so S of 1 is true. In the basis step, S of 1 is true. So in your inductive step, we are going to assume that S of n is true. So we assume that n cube plus 2n is always divisible by 3. So to assume that, how can we write? We are going to use a constant factor. We are going to write like n cube plus 2n. N cube plus 2n, we are going to write we are going to assume it is divisible by 3 and we are going to use a constant factor. We are going to write like n cube plus 2n is equal to 3m. We are going to use a constant factor there. And we don't bother about that constant because I want the numbers to be divisible by 3. This is our assumption. N cube plus 2n is always going to be divisible by 3. Okay, so 3 into some constant factor. This is your assumption. Based on this assumption, we are going to prove S of n plus 1 is true. So as in your previous problem, what we did, wherever there was n, you put a n plus 1. In your question, in your given question, what is there? N cube plus 2n. This is your given statement. Given statement is n cube plus 2n. So wherever there is n, you just replace that n with n plus 1. You see the left hand side alone now. You have, wherever there is n, you write n plus 1. So it is n plus 1 the whole cube plus 2 into n plus 1. Here you just apply all the multiplication. You have the formula for a plus b the whole cube. Is it not? Can any one of you type the formula for a plus b the whole cube in your chat box? So that later you can refer how this statement has gone here. What is the formula for a plus b the whole cube? One of you type in your chat box. A plus b the whole cube is a cube plus b cube plus whoever knows, you just type. Others, you can note down the formula. So cube you cannot type in the chat, is it not? You just write it as 3, a3. So I'll just tell the formula you write in a notebook. A plus b the whole cube is. Anybody can you tell, or shall I ask someone? What is the formula for a plus b the whole cube? Saranya, can you recollect what is the formula for a plus b the whole cube? M Saranya. Sorry, yes Saranya. Saranya, are you listening the class? So some students are also joining the class and doing all the household work. At that one time only, I think you will go and brush your teeth. Not answering. In second years, when I'm handling class, I just remove those students also. If you're not answering when I'm asking a query, those students also will be marked as absent. Neha, just answer what is the, give the formula for a cube plus b cube, sorry, a plus b the whole cube. Neha.
Ma'am, a cube plus 3a squared b plus 3ab squared plus b cube, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Okay, all of you note down this formula. So this you are going to apply here. A plus b the whole cube is a cube plus b cube plus 3a squared b plus 3ab squared. So applying that only we have generated this equation. Okay. So n cube plus, this is 1 is a b cube and then 3a square b and 3ab square. And b is your 1. And 2 into n plus 1 is written as 2n plus 1. And you just solve this. So when you are deriving this kind of problem like divisibility, I will try to show that divisibility. I'll try that all the terms has a 3 in it. Just watch the last few lines. We will try to derive at a situation where all the terms will have a 3 in it. Then we can easily prove that the entire term is divisible by 3. Okay, we try to have a 3 in all the places. So now also you just use your assumption. We have assumed that n cube plus 2n is equal to 3m. Use that assumption. So replace n cube plus 2n. Okay, replace this n cube plus 2n as 3m. The remaining terms alone you just group it. The remaining terms you are having 3n squared plus 3n plus 3. All the terms has a 3. So this n cube plus 2n also it has been equated as 3m. So now when all the terms as a 3, you take 3 as a common term and you can conclude that the entire term is divisible by 3. So therefore S of n plus 1 is divisible by 3 and S of n is true for all possible values. Like that you will be concluding. Okay. So even though I have not written the last statement, you give a conclusion. Hence, S of n is true for all possible values. Write this statement at the bottom. S of n is true for all possible values. Hence, the theorem is proved. Like that only you will write in mathematics, is it not? When you are solving this in your math class, you will write like that. S of n is true for all possible values. Hence, the theorem is proved. Like that you conclude. Okay. So this one more problem. This you just write down. You try to solve it on your own. Write the question alone. You try to solve it on your own. We shall not discuss in the class now. 1 cube plus 2 cube up to n cube is equal to n squared plus n squared into n plus 1 the whole squared by 4. To try it on your own. This is a sample exercise I have given. This problem has not been asked even once. Only the first 3 problems and divisibility by 13. Repeatedly, some certain set of problems they are asked. This you can take it as a practice problem. 1 cube plus 2 cube up to n cube is equal to n squared into n plus 1 the whole squared by 4. This you take it as a practice problem and complete in your notebook. Okay, I am not going to show the entire answer. Okay, so just go through what are all the proof techniques that was listed earlier. That is deductive proof, inductive proof, proof by contradiction, proof by counterexample, proof by contrapositive, and then proof about set. And there was one thing called as a reduction to definition. Not that I have not shown in your slide. Reduction to definition, that form of theorems, they will have a descriptive statement in your theorem. You will have some paragraph-like thing. You will have a paragraph-like description in your theorem. So your reduction to definition, it means that we are going to reduce the given statement to a definition. That is, we'll gather information from that paragraph and you will try to write it in terms of the other notation like if. Okay, we'll try to write it in terms of definition, that is deductive proof. Okay, deductive proof is written in the form of if h then c, is it not? So the descriptive statement given in your theorem, it can be rewritten in terms of if h then c, that is deductive form. Therefore, that particular technique is called as reduction to definition. Okay, in that particular page, you just write down reduction to definition is when your theorem is in the form of a descriptive paragraph or descriptive sentences, it will be like English like description of a paragraph. You try to read that statement and gather information and we convert it into a deductive statement like if h then c. We try to convert it into if h then c and then proceed with deductive proof technique. Okay, so therefore I didn't make a slide there. So with this, your proof techniques is over. Once again, remember why we are studying this proof techniques is we are studying this. Don't think this is a mathematics concept. The proof techniques, it will be applied in your problems wherever you are doing conversions. Apart from that, in all your 4 units, in all the problems, all these problems, they are associated with these proof techniques. Okay, we will be applying your if and only if condition, and we'll be applying your if h then c, and we'll be applying mathematical induction concept in your automata, regular expressions, context-free grammars, in your Turing machines, in every places, in all the 4 units, remaining 4 units also, we are going to apply these proof techniques like deductive proof and then inductive proof. Mainly we'll be using deductive proof if h then c, and then if and only if condition, and then inductive technique. These 3 techniques, it will be applicable in all the units. That's why we are seeing this proof techniques. Okay, so with this, first unit is over. Problems we have to practice more. Okay, so the first unit problems you have to practice. Whenever you are free, just turn back to your notebooks and read it. Then you can understand. Okay. So I'll just give a short description of your second unit today, and we'll see more problems tomorrow. Okay. So with this, your first unit is over.